The sermon I'm about to give you today, it's called a message here, not a sermon, is one I have never preached in 36 years. I have a passage of scripture that I have actually always overlooked, mostly because I didn't get it, because the commentaries that I read really were not satisfying, and I felt like they had missed the mark, and I just did not understand it. So it's easy when you have a lectionary, just skip over the stuff you don't like. So I skipped over this all this time until I came here today. And it's a parable of Jesus, and he spoke this parable when he was dealing with the religious leaders. And this is what he said. No one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, the new wine will burst the skins and will be spilled, and the skins will be destroyed. But new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. And no one, after drinking old wine, desires new wine, but says the old is good. And he was speaking of the Pharisees wanting to have the old wine. And I realized of late I'm a very good Pharisee because I want the old ways. I want the old wine. It's the better tasting wine by far. Think about it. I want the old ways when in the summertime especially, this place would be filled and any latecomers would have to take the front row seats. I want the old ways where after the service we would go in and have some wonderful desserts and then come back to this space and not have to worry about how much time we were spending indoors, not have to worry how far away we were from each other, and we could speak our minds and fellowship for another hour. I want the old ways back, don't you? I want my old understandings, even though they were not accurate. I want the old denials that when we're in a crisis, we all come together and forget our respective religions and forget our political persuasions and come together as a people. I want to still believe that fiction. I want to believe that we're better people, and sometimes we are, but a lot of times we aren't. I want the old ways back. So I understand why the Pharisees wanted the old ways back. After all, they were in an occupied land. And in order to preserve their culture, they needed to come together as a people. And so these traditions that they had were very important to them. And every time this public rabbi, Jesus, would come to town and start flouting one of their traditions, it was very disturbing to them. And so they take Jesus to task and say, why? Why aren't you observing the old ways? And it wasn't that the old ways were bad, but he said something new is coming. And when something new comes, you have to put it in other containers so that it can hold it. And I realized when he said that to put new wineskins, he wasn't meaning you drink it right away, but you put it in a new container and then you let it mature and you let it deepen for a while. And I think in this day and age, what we're dealing with, we are at an inflection point, not only in the United States, but also in our fellowship and in our county. And there are new things being thrown at us all the time, and we have to find new containers to hold them and new understandings. We have to find a way to use technology so it doesn't overrun us, but we can use it for good. We have to find a way to deal with a new economy. We have to find a way that the economy works for all and not just for some. And we have to reach another generation, and we cannot do it the way we've always done it. You know what that way is. We wait till the next generation has kids and then drag them into the building. That might not work this time around. And we have to find new ways and new containers. And maybe it means that we have to go into dialogue with people who are not within the building and in this space and find ways to engage and be partners rather than mentors. We have to find new ways of being, and it's difficult. I think of a new wine opportunity in my own denomination. We had a young pastor. Fortunately, she's still in the denomination. I was quite surprised and pleased that she stuck with us. But she was sent to a church that was dying. Their best days had been behind them. And she reimagined church. She turned the parsonage into a commune. Now, she was too young to understand and live through the 60s, but still, she turned the parsonage into an artist commune. She started ministries for the homeless. She actually went on a counting tour so that during the census, the homeless would be counted. She had all sorts of very innovative programs. And this small church, what did they do? She wasn't bringing them in to the fellowship. They were not learning the correct ways, and so they bucked her at every turn. And after a few years, she said, I can't do this any longer. And so she asked the denomination to kind of take her out of that situation, and they did. And within a month of her leaving, the church closed all those ministries. And the church died. And I'm not sorry it did. She came to Milwaukee, to Wisconsin, and she said, I want to start a feeding ministry. She not only wanted to start a feeding ministry, she wanted to start a vegan feeding ministry in meat and potatoes, Wisconsin. And I was fully supportive. I mean, I'm a meat and potatoes kind of person, but I thought I'm not living down there, so I can support this. And we started going to the churches and asking for help. And somebody from a church who was high up in the church asked me the question, these are old containers, and we all have them. What's in it for us? And I wanted to shout, absolutely nothing. What was in it for Jesus? But I didn't. You know, I was polite. I tried to market it correctly. But, you know, that's an old wineskin. And so many of us, even when we don't want to admit it, we do things because it feeds us. But fortunately, there was a small church, a church that had been through so much turmoil. And they were struggling. They struggled financially. They were going paycheck to paycheck. They couldn't afford a full-time minister. They could barely afford to keep the building open. But they held on to this dream of this young woman. And they donated tens of thousands of man hours and woman hours in order to make that dream a reality. If you're ever in Milwaukee, walk into Trickle B Cafe. It's a pay what you can ministry. And even through the pandemic, it's been open and they've been able to feed people. They've not only fed people, they've created community gardens. They found ways to lift people out of poverty. Why? Because there was a young person's dream. I certainly could not have done what she did. I had no idea how she could pull this off, especially on a shoestring and especially in meat and potatoes, Wisconsin. But there was a group that found a new container, and it was a container of love and of possibility. I don't know what change will bring to us in the next decade. I know there's going to be a lot. Some of it might be marvelous change, I hope, and some might be awful. But how we position ourselves, how we use our containers to bring hope to bring love, to bring peace, to bring justice, starting in Door County and then throughout the communities of Wisconsin, the United States, and the world. May we be the containers of new wine. Amen.